Leafcutter ants make their nests in underground chambers. They emerge regularly to forage, blazing trails that extend hundreds of feet into the forest. Most tropical plants are permeated with toxic chemicals, a deterrent against browsers. The ants cut fresh vegetation, but they don't eat it. They feed it to another organism. Foragers carry their cargo down into the nest and turn it over to smaller worker ants. They clean the leaf fragments and chew them into a pulpy mulch. Leafcutters cultivate a fungus that breaks down the toxins in the leaves and swells with proteins and sugars. This is the ant's food.
Both the ants and the cultivated fungus are dependent on each other for living. The ants need the fungus as a food. They're dependent on it. You take away the fungus, they will die. In reverse, the fungus cannot do without the ants. So it's a mutual codependency.
A mature colony of leafcutter ants can consist of as many as 8 million individuals, and they're the dominant herbivores of the New World tropics. They take an estimated 15 to 20% of all the fresh vegetation. A mature colony of Atta leafcutter ants are the equivalent of an adult cow sitting in the middle of the rainforest, foraging on the vegetation in their immediate area.
The entire rainforest is affected by the symbiosis of ant and fungus. To understand how it evolved, Schultz and Mueller collect ant nests throughout Latin America.
Here's one. Where? Oh, yeah.
An experienced eye can spot the subtle signs of a young nest, founded perhaps 6 months ago when a new queen left home with a bit of fungus in her mouth and burrowed into the ground.
There it is. Beautiful.
Opening a nest is a very exciting moment. Suddenly the cavity opens and you see the fungus garden. And then you may see the queen.
There's the queen.
Yeah, she is.
The size of a peanut.
What we've learned from studying the ants is that you can have a long-term existence over 50 million years as an agriculturist. There's clear parallels between the ant agriculture and human agriculture. Both types of societies are dependent on cultivation of some other organism and have very sophisticated procedures how to promote the growth of these organisms.
But human farmers are plagued by pests in their crops, while the ants' gardens seemed pest-free. A century of research had concluded that the ants are probably so adept at weeding that no infestation can take hold. A graduate student in 1998, Cameron Curry just didn't buy it.
I actually had some people tell me that looking at diseases in the ant gardens was kind of a silly project, that the ants maintain their gardens free of diseases, and so why would you be going there to look for diseases? So I went out and collected ant colonies and I isolated pieces of the garden to see what was there other than the fungus the ants cultivated.
He cultured 1,500 fungus samples, and the same aggressive mold kept showing up. When he removed the ants from a nest, he saw the mold devastate the fungus in a matter of days. So the ants did have a pest in their gardens. But how did they keep it so completely under control? Cameron began to wonder about a white, waxy coating on the body parts of some ants. What really intrigued him were the ants working deep in the gardens that were covered with this stuff. He asked the experts about it.
In the past, people had just considered this to be some sort of nondescript secretion that was produced by the ants for unknown, probably uninteresting reasons.
And Cameron was the first to put this waxy secretion under the microscope and notice it was not inert and lifeless, but it was actually alive.
The wax turned out to be tangled mats of bacteria. But what shocked Cameron was these were the same types of bacteria that produce half the antibiotics used in human medicine.
I remember my graduate advisor and I were laughing, thinking that wouldn't this be exciting if these ants have been effectively using these bacteria for production of antibiotics for millions of years, when humans only discovered this 60 years ago, and we thought at the time that this was maybe a bit far-fetched.
Far-fetched, but true. It seems the ants have been using antibiotics to control the pest in their gardens for some 50 million years. So why hasn't the mold evolved antibiotic resistance?
I think that the answer probably lies in the fact that the ants are using cultures of millions of cells of bacteria to produce these antibiotics. And so these bacteria are evolving. Likewise, the pathogen that is the target of these antibiotics is also evolving. And it's an evolutionary arms race that has continued for 50 million years.
And so the symbiosis of ant and fungus also includes the aggressive mold in the fungus garden and the bacteria living on the ants. Nature is often more complex than it first appears.
Scientists have just begun to understand how two species can interact, or three, or four.